Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody in between, welcome to another episode of the Jake Botel Sports Experience, the Week 6 Championship Hurling Recap Show. Got a couple of games to dig into in this episode between Kilkenny and Wexford and Tipperary and Cork, and we'll recap all of the other games for you from Leinster and Munster and Joe McDonagh Cup. This one's a bit delayed. The day job got in the way. Got to earn those dollars to pay those bills, pay the internet connection so I can upload episodes. So hopefully this is some hurling content to get you through a weekend without any intercounty senior hurling. If you'd be so kind while you watch along, hit that subscribe button, sends good vibes your way and helps me to grow the channel. So it's a win-win. First up, let's get into the game between Kilkenny and Wexford, which went a long way to deciding the makeup of the Leinster Hurling Championship, the final three and all that sort of thing. A massive game for Wexford. It was, win or go home for them. And they came into Nolan Park and delivered a brilliant team performance. They got the first 2 points of the game on the board, Wexford, and then Kilkenny just responded in dominant fashion. Kilkenny, there was a couple of points, I believe it was for TJ Reid. There was a goal for Mossy Keown, who just has that knack of scoring goals. So Kilkenny went up 6-2 after 7 minutes. Just looking so clinical. The Cats scored 1-4 without a reply, and you started to think this could really slip away here for Wexford. You know, if Kilkenny can stamp out a big early advantage, that might just break the back of Wexford. But that wasn't how it panned out. It was Lee Chin, the Wexford Superman, who broke the drought for the visitors. And it was Lee Chin again with a hat trick of frees that drew it back to a 1 point game. They tied it up 8-8 when Diarmuid O'Keefe sails one over. There was a lot of Kilkenny goal threat early on, where they were really taking on, looking to get the ball into the back of the net. That really faded across the rest of the game. I thought Kilkenny became kind of neutered in their goal threat until sort of late on when they were really chasing the result. A bit one-dimensional, I suppose. Now, whether that was, any sort of attacking failure on their side or whether it was Wexford, what Wexford were doing defensively. There was a lot of talk on the broadcast about the role Diarmuid O'Keefe was playing as the spare man. I was sort of interested to dig into that more because, from my own time playing sport, the spare man often sits sort of, I don't know, behind the defense. I remember playing, sweeper in soccer, and that player sitting behind the rest of the defense, whereas they were talking about Diarmuid O'Keefe sitting, I think they said he was sitting to the right-hand side of the back line, and everyone else sort of shifted, one position to the left. That was sort of what they were saying on the broadcast. Maybe someone who knows exactly how that system worked on the weekend could comment in the comments, educate this ignorant Australian. Always interested to learn about the ins and outs of a game that I haven't played, I've only watched. But there was a lot of talk about the role that Diarmuid O'Keefe played. But the goal threat really went out of it for Kilkenny after the early stages. And Wexford really came to the fore. It was Lee Chin who led the way. He's such a sort of talismanic kind of player for them. He just does. He seems to deal almost exclusively in motivational moments. Inspirational points, standing up in big moments when it counts. So Wexford stormed back. They got a goal through Oisin Foley. I was going to say Oisin Mullen, but he plays for Mayo. I think I've got it on the brain because I'm a Geelong Cats fan. It would have been great to have Oisin Mullen for the Cats this year. It was Oisin Foley who rattled a goal into the net for Wexford to give them a 3-point advantage at halftime. They were up 1-11 to 1-8 at the half. It could have been a bigger advantage, actually. to Wexford. A brilliant save on the line by Owen Murphy. Off, I think it was Connor McDonald, got the ball, spun around, and point blank range fired the ball in on goal. And Owen Murphy, I mean, it was fired, near enough to his body, but um, to have the guts to stand there and adjust the hurl slightly and knock it out of the net. That takes some cojones. I don't know if I'd have the fibre to play goal in hurling. It was an immense effort. Um, of toughness, and you've got to have a little mix of stupidity mixed in with the toughness to stand in goal um, in any game, but far out hurling definitely. You got to have a bit of insanity, I think, to stand back there in the net. So that meant that preserved just the 3 point deficit. Kilkenny could have gone in at halftime and been 6 points down. It was relatively even in that second half. It got to 1-14 apiece with 20 minutes left, 1-16 with 10 minutes left. But it was Lee Chin again, bringing other players into it, scoring his own points. And it was Wexford that were able to get on top in that last 10 minutes. They scored 6 points to 2 in that last 10 minutes. So massive result for Wexford going into Kilkenny territory and getting the win, and with the Dublin loss to Galway, which we'll recap the score of that just before we head off at the end of this episode. That put Wexford through. It allowed Kilkenny through as well, and Galway finished on top. We discussed the sort of the fade of Kilkenny's goal threat across the game. Wexford's work rate was absolutely relentless. Whether it was winning high ball, whether it was just working to pressure Kilkenny's players, on the ball. And the running through the lines as well, that sort of gut running to try and open Kilkenny up through the lines was really inspirational. Lee Chin, absolutely immense. We've mentioned Jim and O'Keefe, but this, as I said, massive result for Wexford, and the final score was 118 Kilkenny to 122 Wexford. TJ Reid scored 10 points. I thought he's an interesting player at this point in his career. Like, you can see the brilliance, and then at other times there's a bit of rust. Don't know if that's because he's had sort of a shortened pre-season lead into this. Can sometimes take him a little bit to get going, but still, such a dangerous player in his moments. Keown scored 1-1. Carey 2 points for Wexford. Lee Chin 9. Superman stands up. Oisin Foley with 1 goal, and Jim and O'Keefe with the 2 points. I made Lee Chin my man of the match. That might be, the obvious choice, but it's the obvious choice for a reason. You look at players like Lee Chin, there's a lot of pressure that comes with that position of being that team leader, and everyone's looking to you to stand up in the big moments, and it doesn't get much bigger than having to lead the team in scoring in a must-win championship match on the road to a big rival, and he stood up in spades. So for me, Lee Chin, an obvious choice, but that to me makes sense. He's the obvious choice for man of the match. We'll have a look at the full scorers here for you. TJ Reid, the 10 points. Mossy Keown, 1 goal, 1. Carey with 2. Mullen with 2. Walter Walsh with 1. Ryan and Walsh with 1 each, so a total of 118. I think that was a massive thing for Wexford, was their diversity of scorers. They had a dozen different players hit the score sheet. So as much as you've got Lee Chin leading the way with 9, you had Oisin Foley with the goal. You had 2 points each to Dermot O'Keefe, Rory O'Connor and Donoghue, McDonald, Liam O'McGovern, O'Connor, Ryan, Dwyer, Flood and Dunbar all getting 1 point each. So that was a massive thing for them, given that Kilkenny had just the 7 scorers. And that's, I think, what you saw when, I talked about Kilkenny sort of becoming a little bit one-dimensional. Wexford just had so many ways to score going back the other way. So where does this result take both of our teams? So Kilkenny, uh, the Cats qualify in second place in the Leinster Championship despite the loss to Wexford, which means they now face Galway in the Leinster Championship final in a couple of weeks' time. This is, of course, Act 2 in the Cody v Shefflin storyline in 2022. The first act, of course, producing a Galway win with the final puck of the game and the now infamous post-game handshake between the two coaches. So that's a juicy matchup for the hurling and the storylines. That'll please both the hurling purists and those who love a good soap opera. For Wexford, they seal up their spot in the All-Ireland finals with this Kilkenny win. They will now take on the Joe McDonagh Cup final runner-up, either Antrim or Kerry, on June 11th or 12th in a preliminary quarter final. That gives them a nice little rest spell after a massive performance against Kilkenny and a chance to see if they can continue to build on that performance moving forward. Easily Wexford's best performance of the season. So now it's up to them to show that that's something they can actually build on consistently and wasn't just an anomalous ripper performance against a big rival. So that's where both teams are headed. We are now headed onto the Munster Hurling Championship game that I got to watch between my team Tipperary and Cork. Yes, I'm going to recap it because I'm an absolute professional. This game played down in Turles on Sunday, 22nd of May. Tipp started like a house on fire, in the good sense, not like a burning wreck. A dashing goal to Tipperary after just 39 seconds, and this pundit was off his couch, carrying on like a pork chop. Then there was two Noel McGrath frees after the goal, either side of a Jake Morris effort over the shoulder, and Tipp had raced out to a 1-3 to nothing lead after 5 minutes. Patrick Horgan did break the Cork drought after 6. Tipperary were absolutely savage with their intensity early on, breaking every 50-50 ball, winning aerial contests right up, the back of their man, right on them, smothering them, forcing turnovers. Conor Lahan on Barry Heffernan looked an issue early on, and, reading the tea leaves, we should have known that would grow into an issue. Lahan was getting so much space, the ability to just stop and swivel and deposit back-to-back points over the bar. But Tipperary's deep ball early on was causing the Cork defenders problems, and on 10 minutes they were awarded a penalty after Keogh was mugged by a Rebels defender. A brilliant save, I thought, at full extension with the stick by the goalkeeper of Cork, kept the ball out of the net, but on further replay, ricocheted off the post to me. So that moment in time swung the match immeasurably. The game essentially ended there because Cork went coast to coast from that missed penalty, ferried the ball straight up the ground, and Alan Connolly, who I tell you what is some player, and I feel like he adds something just a little bit different to Cork's lineup. He scored a goal against Clare. He scored 2 goals against Waterford. He scored a goal in this game against Tipperary. He just adds this grit and bullish sort of never say die presence in the Cork forward. Like, he will fight and scrap to create goal scoring opportunities. And he put the ball into the back of the net with ruthless authority against Tipperary, and suddenly, instead of it being a 7-point Tipperary lead, if that penalty hits the back of the net, it's a 1-point lead. Conor Lahan tied it up shortly after Robbie O'Flynn put Cork ahead after 14 minutes. And I was thinking, we're on toast here if we're not careful, and we weren't careful. Dara Fitzgibbon dashed straight through Tipperary. No one went to him. He buried a skidding shot into the Tipperary net, and suddenly Cork were up by 4 points. They'd outscored Tipperary 2-5 to 2 points in the previous 10 minutes of play. The wind was out of the Tipp sail at that point. They were suddenly trailing Cork to every ball, simple passes, not finding a target. And Conor Lahan just eviscerated Tipperary in the first half. Tipperary just lacked the experience, I think, to stabilise themselves and halt the rebel riot. The penalty save, I think, was an absolute gut punch that knocked them to the map. The lead ballooned out to 9-20 after half an hour, and the game was gone by then. It's very strange. The first 5-10 minutes, leading up to that penalty, felt more like the Limerick game for Tipperary, and where and the news sort of filtering through that Waterford looked like they were going to get done by Clare, and as a Tip fan, you started to have a little bit of hope and go, far out. Maybe if we can keep this up, we're up 6-0 after 5 minutes. Now we've got a penalty on 10 minutes. We could be up by 7. And I'll always wonder what would have happened if that ball went into the back of the net. I mean, there were definitely signs that Lahan was an issue, that we were having issues guarding him. But you just wonder what happens if you take that 7-point lead and that momentum keeps rising. But it was air out of the balloon in a major way. And you could just see the shoulders slump, and that was it. Cork were up and about. Someone said last week, about Cork as a hurling team, if you let them get a sniff, they will get up and about in a flash, and then they're almost impossible to stop. And that's what it was. They were just impossible for Tipperary to stop. It was 12-20 at halftime. The halftime report came in that Clare was slaughtering Waterford, which was an absolute kick in the balls as a Tipperary fan, just to think that the other results were going your way. We actually had the ball in the back of the net, Tip, just after halftime, but the referee had already blown the whistle for a foul. We went back and forwards with Cork, 4 points for 4 in the first 10 minutes. I liked some of what Connor Stakelham did. He's sort of physical, bullish, and brave, skilled too. I like his future in a Tip jersey. But Tipperary were wasteful from play, missed a lot of shots across the game. Don't have that same systematic scoring threat that Cork do, that Clare do, that Limerick do. And that makes sense when you think about the amount of players that they're missing. But we were out on our feet. Tipperary out on their feet. Cork could pretty much pick their score. There was just men running in acres of space. It was a laugh, really, in the second half. It just turned into a training drill, pretty much, for Cork. Alan Flynn was sent off on 60 minutes. Cork scored an amazing, champagne hurling goals. Tim O'Mahony, I think it was, on the end of a beautiful ground strike cross, flicks it into the net first time past Hogan. The final score in this game, 124 Tipperary to 330 Cork. Just an absolute avalanche after those first 10 minutes. Noel McGrath, 13 points for Tipperary. Jake Morris, 1-2. Ford scored 5. It was Conor Lahan with 8 points. Patrick Horgan with 5. And Alan Connolly, 1-1. I made Conor Lahan my man of the match. Yes, he was allowed more space than he should have been allowed, but he used it so beautifully to bring other players into the game, to open Tip up, to score his own points. His influence was massive, and it's just, as a Tipperary supporter, you just go, what could you have done differently to shut him down? Massive turnaround for Cork from where their season was, from where the sort of buzz was around them and what they are as a team. I think they're imperfect. I think they're an imperfect team, but they're a better team for being imperfect, for taking a few more chances down the field. They've got their confidence back, I think. I think it is worth noting that the 2 wins that they've pulled out have been against the 2 sides that finished in the bottom 2 of the Munster Hurling Championship. I think Tipperary have been so far below par this season that this wasn't a particularly big test, I don't think, for Cork. It showed, I guess, how easily the Tipperary confidence this season could be punctured. With the penalty miss, straight back up there, and another goal shortly after. And that, I suppose, is just the mark of a transitioning team, a team in transition, a team without a lot of experienced players. But Cork can still, make a lot of noise in this championship. And you wonder the real tests are going to come against the teams like Clare, against the teams like Limerick, uh, even, against a team like maybe Galway, more physically willing and able teams that are able to keep the pressure on you and keep matching you in physicality for 70 minutes. That's where it's going to be interesting to see where the heart of this Cork team lies. But right now, they've vaulted themselves back into the picture, and deservedly so. They've gone away from um, the sort of overkill of finesse hurling in the back line, and they've added a little bit more of vertical sort of threat down the field, and that just puts defenses under so much more pressure. Um, so great win for Cork. A note I thought too, there's a lot of stuff online, fans saying Tipperary surrendered too often this season. But I think it's worth saying, what about the crowds? I mean, talk about surrendering home ground advantage in this game to Cork. There was barely a squeak um, out of our Tipperary home fans. They were far outnumbered in your home ground in a must-win game. Um, there's a lot of soul searching to do, I think, in Tipperary, and um, you know, this is a county that won an All Ireland just what three seasons ago, back in 2019. Um, got to stick with them through thick and thin, and who knows where they can end up. There are talented hurlers coming through. There's talented. Was it our the Tipperary under 17s who won a title just this year, just a few weeks ago. So there is talent coming through, and there was so much. I think it was a train wreck of a season, really, with losing like Potty Ma right at the start of the season, like that. That's massive. Talk about talismanic leaders like Lee Chin and that sort of thing. Losing Potty Ma and a lot of players, being injured, unavailable, etc. That's just the way it goes sometimes, and I suppose it exposes a bit of your depth. But God, baptism of fire for Colm Bonner in his first season as Tipperary's manager. I'll show you the scores here. Tipperary, they had Noel McGrath with 13 points, Morris 1-2, Ford with 5, Stakelham, Quirk, and the two Mars with 1 point each to get to 124. For Cork, it was Conor Lahan with 8, Horgan with 5, Connolly 1-1. I really, really like Connolly. 1-1 for Tim O'Mahony, 4 points to Shane Kingston, 1 goal to Dara Fitzgibbon, 3 points each to Robbie O'Flynn, Coleman and Harnedy, and 2 points to O'Connor for a massive total of 330. Could have been a lot more. They did take their foot off the gas just ever so slightly in the last few minutes. So what does it look like now for these two teams? Well, Cork have a lot to look forward to. After looking like they were down and out just a few weeks ago, the Rebels have surged back into the All-Ireland picture with thumping wins over Waterford and Tipperary. Given those wins came against the bottom two sides in Munster, remains to be seen if Cork can get the business done at the pointier end of the tournament. But before all that, it's a preliminary quarter-final against the winner of the Joe McDonagh Cup. That's either Antrim or Kerry, whoever wins that one, on June 11th or 12th. So that's where the Rebels are headed. For Tipperary, there's nothing really coming up this week for Tipp's hurling team. They now wait to see the result of the Joe McDonagh Cup final between Kerry and Antrim. If Antrim win, then Tipp won't return to the field as a team until the league in 2023. However, if Kerry were to win against Antrim, that will set up Tipperary for a relegation playoff match against the Kingdom to defend their spot in the Munster Hurling Championship. So if Kerry win, this team has to get up and about to go and play Kerry to maintain their status in the Munster Hurling Championship. So that's what's on the cards for these two teams. Before I get out of here, let's get you up to speed with all of the results. So in the Joe McDonagh Cup, Antrim v Kerry, a pre-match of the Joe McDonagh Cup final. Antrim going down 221 to 29 points to Kerry. You had Down defeat Meath 228 to 219. You had Offaly lose 17 to 22 to Carlow. So that put Antrim and Kerry through to the final of the Joe McDonagh Cup. That was Antrim's only loss of the Joe McDonagh Cup season was to Kerry. I'm interested to see whether there was any gamesmanship at all in terms of, how Antrim played. Or I don't know. I think you'd want to have won that. They could have knocked Kerry out if they'd won. So I think there was plenty of motivation there. Carlo and Offley missed the final on scoring differential and head-to-head records, all of that sort of thing. They did manage to get to 3 wins themselves down, maintained their Joe McDonagh Cup status with 4 points on the board. Meath will be going down after finishing on 0 points and a minus 101 point differential. In the Leinster Hurling Championship, you had Kilkenny v Wexford. The Cats losing 118 to 122 against Wexford. Galway easily handled Dublin 27 to 21. That result never really in doubt. Galway complete an undefeated campaign in the pool games. Laois, this surprised me. I probably thought Westmeath would get the job done, but I thought Laois would, even undermanned, would be really up for this match. But they were blown out of the water in a game that I believe was 114 to 114 at halftime. It's all tied up, was what I thought I saw in the recap. And then Westmeath just blow it out after halftime. They win 524 to 118. So if Antrim win the Joe McDonagh Cup, Laois will find themselves going down from Leinster Championship. So Galway and Kilkenny will play off in the Leinster Hurling final. You've got Wexford making it through to the next round of All-Ireland finals. Dublin and Westmeath miss out. Dublin will be disappointed after opening the campaign with 3 wins in a row, but then not having those extra gears to go with Kilkenny and Galway. Westmeath will be really happy with how they played their campaign. The draw against Wexford last week really helped buoy them. They've performed well against everyone, really, despite what final scores might have looked like at times. They've been in most of their games, and then the absolute trouncing of Laois. Laois will be disappointed, but they've also been stricken with a lot of injuries. The Munster Championship, Tipperary, as we went over, trounced by Cork. 124 to 330. But Clare, this was a big result, I thought. Clare not needing a win, that they did not need to win to stay in the championship, and they obliterated Waterford. Absolutely obliterated them, 331 to 222. In a massive performance. So that shows the hunger, the desire, and the investment from this Clare team. So Clare finished top, importantly, of Munster Hurling Championship. They knocked Limerick down into second spot. Those 2 teams will now play off in the Munster Hurling final. Cork make it through to the next round, and it's season over for Waterford and Tipperary. And that's it. That's all the action wrapped up. There's no hurling this weekend at the senior inter-county level, so I'll be back in a couple of weeks or so to recap all the finals, Joe McDonagh Cup final, Leinster and Munster. If you'd be so kind, hit that subscribe button right there. It sends good vibes your way, helps me grow the channel, so it's a win-win. Until next time, guys, thanks so much for watching.